Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 40 for Thursday, November 20th. My name is Farbod Merkazi, here as always with our lovely co-host, Jace Hatfield. We're previewing Week 13 today. Jace, are you excited to talk about Charlotte, Georgia, or Eastern Illinois, Alabama? What about Samford, Texas A&M, or the big playoff decider of Mercer versus Auburn? It's the SEC bye week that's not a bye week, right? That's all we're going to preview today.
It would be such a nice, it'd feel good being the last year of doing this, to have one of them go down. Could you imagine if Alabama drops, Oklahoma loses a big one, Georgia? If Ole Miss or Georgia, one-loss SEC schools, lose one of these games, are they out?
Dude, if Ole Miss loses, them being out is the least of their worries. The fans might overtake Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin would be on the first flight to Baton Rouge or Gainesville if he loses this weekend, which might be a goal. Actually, we're going to get into Lane Kiffin. There's a massive discussion about him. We talked about him a little bit on our 12 recap show, but that guy's a troll on social media. First of all, we've been texting back and forth. There's a lot to talk about there. James Franklin, by the way, I don't remember the last time a coach got fired and hired in the same season. It's probably happened recently. I just don't remember. James Franklin gets hired at Virginia Tech. We got Shot in the Bark. We got our picks. We're going to preview USC at Oregon. College of Game Day will be there. Massive show. People always say jam-packed show. We got a jam-packed show prep for you. We genuinely have too many topics that we don't know how long this is going to go. But thanks for making sure you are with us. Stay with us the whole way. Make sure you are subscribed to us on YouTube at Flag for Discussion. Spell it out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Twitter at F4 Discussion and on TikTok at Flag4 Discussion. Jace, as we always do on our preview shows, give the viewers a recap of where our picks stand heading into Week 13.
Yeah, we are as neck and neck as you can be. I'm sitting at 44, 40, and 1. I went 3 and 2 last week. Barbode, you're sitting at 45, 39, and 1, 2 and 3 last week. So I'll be going first again this week with a 1-point deficit. I feel like this is the MLB playoffs. Ridiculously high numbers coming down to the wire. A couple of games left. I think this week we're on opposite spots a few times. So a chance for a big flip. And then Shot in the Bark, we're also coming down neck and neck. You're sitting at 11 points. South Carolina, they still gave you a point. Monumental choke job still. Should have been 3, but at least you still got your 1.
I haven't forgiven
they had been up 30-3 and they didn't cover the 17.5, that would have been grounds for calling a hit on South Carolina. And then I'm at 13 points. Northwestern gave me 1 point last week. Not nearly the kind of choke job that South Carolina gave you, but a winnable game for the Cats as well. But I'll take my 1 point. We got 2 weeks left, this one and one more. So picks and Shot in the Bark, it's coming down to the wire. You probably need a win, an outright winner for Shot in the Bark to feel good. And then I'm going to need probably a 3 and 2 or 4 and 1 week this week if I am going to have hopes to win that pick 'em. And then parlays, 1 for 11. Dismal week last week, going 0 for 4. We had a fade parlay last week where if you faded us, you would have hit. We're hoping to not do that this week, but we'll see where we land. I don't want to get too cocky at all now.
Our best parlays are normally the ones that we like prepare ahead of time, not the ones that we do in our production meeting before the show. But you know what? This week we like our picks too. By the way, South Carolina, real quick, I know we're not starting on them, but we just have to have a conversation about what Shane Beamer said today. Did you see?
Was this the next year at this time we'll be talking about playoff spot?
Yeah, so Shane Beamer goes, I do know next year at this time, we're going to be sitting here on this Tuesday night watching the playoff rankings to see where we are. And next year at this time, I'm going to be a millionaire. What are we doing? Shane Beamer walked into this season. Granted, a lot of things went wrong offensively. And as with his offensive coordinator, had to fire a lot of people. But you had Lenora Sellers. You had Nick Harbor. You had coming off of a pretty good year, looking to grow off of that. And you have 1 win in SEC play. I don't think it's time to be making that comment.
No, he's fighting for his job. People are thinking his head might be the next one chopped. And he's sitting here talking about next year, we're going to be talking about the playoff. It's like that Tony Dungy skit when they're like kind of making fun of the Deion Sanders thing. And he's like, playoffs. Yeah. Let's focus on keeping our job here, Shane.
This actually segues really good into our first segment because at the beginning of the year, people were considering Shane Beamer as the top choice for Virginia Tech because his dad was the legendary coach at Virginia Tech, and he may have the desire to bring him back to prominence. But he's 1-7 in SEC play. So the coach that is chosen to bring them back to prominence, James Franklin, was hired to be the next head coach of the Virginia Tech Hokies. Jason and I have texted about this already. We've done a podcast in our text. Like, I'm not going to lie. We've done such long voice memos back and forth that it's basically been a podcast. But for the viewers, for the listeners, we're going to give our takes here. Jace, what do we think about this hire? Is this a grand slam hire for Virginia Tech? Is this a home run hire? Did they just hit a single? Was it a bad hire? We'll get into the Penn State side of it. We'll get into James Franklin in general. But like for Virginia Tech, where are we for this hire?
Yeah, I like this as a home run hire for them. It's an immediate upgrade. Virginia Tech hasn't been like consistently nationally relevant in our lifetimes. They've had moments where they've been ranked and they've been good, but hasn't been sustained. And what we know about James Franklin, he has an opportunity to go there and actually sustain success at a program that hasn't seen it. Also, just as a college football fan, it's incredibly fun at the idea of Virginia Tech being good consistently. They have cool branding, cool colors. Enter Sandman is awesome. And like right now, because they're so seldomly on national TV where you're going to watch that game, you don't really see it as a fan. So it's going to be a cool atmosphere to have them play in big games. I also think Virginia Tech, getting a guy like James Franklin, as you mentioned earlier, he's already brought in a commit, I believe, right? 4-star QB. And I imagine he's going to bring a bunch of more commits, and the transfer portal. Virginia Tech's probably going to immediately be one of the more attractive transfer portal destinations. You upgrade massively at the head coach position. He's already got a general manager in there. I'll expect more coaches to follow. That's just going to open the door up for high-end college football players around the country looking for an opportunity to start. That's going to be a good place to be for that. And it's in the ACC. It's a conference that, like, trying to think of the best way to word it, can be dominated. I know it sounds weird, but it's a conference that doesn't really have a top dog that's just like running through everybody the way Ohio State does or Georgia and Alabama do in the SEC. It's a conference that kind of has an open door, and James Franklin immediately joins it as one of the best coaches in that conference, top 3. I really like the spot for Virginia Tech. I think it was an immediate upgrade from the entire coaching perspective, and then I think the roster upgrade, obviously with the season not being over, hasn't happened yet, but I think that's going to be quick to follow. I think they'll be immediately better at recruiting than they have been, more wins than they're used to. It's going to be a good time down there in Virginia Tech.
I think this is a grand slam hire, and I agree with every point you just made. But for what this signals to us, James Franklin knows what it takes to build a powerhouse national championship contender. The guy was in the semifinals of the playoff last year. Obviously, he had an easy route. We don't need to go down the road of like the easy path Penn State had last year. But I'm not saying he's going to build that at Virginia Tech, but I'm just saying he knows the funding it takes to run Penn State. He knows the resources he needed. He knows the size of staff you need. He knows the personnel you need outside of your football staff, just like the people you need in the building. The fact that Virginia Tech committed this level of investment, that's why this makes it a grand slam hire for me. It signals Virginia Tech is serious about football, and they raise their investment considerably. More than anything, James Franklin, we have a lot of fun about him. We joked about a lot of the flaws he has as a head coach. He can sometimes talk like a politician. Basically didn't lose the team, but the team was so all in that like when Oregon beat them, they broke. And there was no going back. So we'll get into the actual Penn State side of it in a second. But in terms of James Franklin, you'd be hard-pressed to find 10 better coaches in America in terms of building a program, knowing how to recruit, loving recruiting, and being involved in every aspect of the program. There's CEO head coaches like Brian Kelly who do it for ego, and there's coaches like James Franklin who they might not ever achieve that A+ national championship level, but at the same time, they are clearly very good men. They are clearly very involved in their kids' lives. The players love them. The coaches who coach for them love coaching for him. This is a grand slam of grand slam hires for Virginia Tech. Also, considering the fact that Virginia Tech made this hire. If you told me a year ago that Virginia Tech in its current state was going to go hire a top 10, 15 consensus top 10, 15 head coach around the country, I'd be saying no shot. But they made this choice, and luckily it was available. And I also, sorry, I know I'm going a little long. No, I have a presumption that this was agreed to like 3 weeks ago. The rumors are that James Franklin had been waiting on Florida State to maybe open, or vetting Arkansas, or like Auburn a little bit maybe. But I think the fact that he already has extremely good connections with the Northeast high school coaches, where he dominated recruiting at Penn State, the fact that he doesn't have to move very far. I mean, it is a state away, but you don't have to move very far. Like, if you were just on Twitter in the last 3 weeks, you saw pictures from time to time of James Franklin at a high school, at a high school game, talking to kids, talking to coaches, and it's like, oh, that guy's recruiting already. And maybe he's not telling the kids where to go, or like, hey, I want you to come play for me at Virginia Tech. He's probably just like making relationships the way he's always done. He was at Penn State for 12 years, didn't get them to the pinnacle, but he also won't have to play Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, USC every year to make the ACC conference championship. So I think this is a fantastic hire for Virginia Tech.
I think it's a great spot for him as well. This is, I think, getting out of the Big Ten and staying out of the SEC, kind of going down to the next tier of conferences. I actually think it's a really good thing for him. It feels like it's going to be a chance for him to like just take a step back, take a deep breath of fresh air, and reevaluate his process, reevaluate his planning. Hey, at my time at Penn State, what did I do really well, and how do I bring that here? And what did I do that led us to fail as much as we did? And how do I avoid that here? And I think he's going to a school that isn't going to have the immediate expectation of winning a national championship or even making the playoff for that matter. It's a school that's going to have patience. They're willing to like build and give you time to build. And that's just you're not going to find that in the SEC. If you were to go, even at Florida State, I know it's an ACC, but if you were to go to a program like Florida State, even the expectation there is going to be a quick turnaround. I think Virginia Tech is going to allow you to do it the right way, the way that you want to, give you a little bit of time. And like you said, it's close to where he's from. He's from Pennsylvania. He's got ties in the Northeast and the East Coast. So I think as a whole, it was a good decision for him. I think it's a really good reset opportunity for him. It's a chance for him to build his name. Whether he long-term Virginia Tech would be really cool. But even if he just succeeds there and then wants to go bigger, I think this is an opportunity where it allows him to do that as well. So I think it's a really mutually beneficial hire for James Franklin to rebuild himself and to not do it under a lot of pressure and scrutiny, and also for Virginia Tech to get to a place they haven't been in quite some time, and especially consistently.
Well, also, to your point, Virginia Tech, so the ACC media rights deal goes until not April, I think June of 2030. Essentially, if there's not an extension on top of that, there's one date in 2030 in the summer that all of a sudden every single ACC team becomes a free agent. If that happens, you want to set yourself up as an ACC team to be desirable by the Big Ten or the SEC, or God forbid, that's the wrong way to put it. Or like if those two aren't interested in you, the Big 12 at that point. Virginia Tech right now isn't. But James Franklin has a pedigree to get Virginia Tech back into national conversation. Not necessarily every year being a national title contender, but in terms of being extremely competitive, showcasing that, like you mentioned, that incredible atmosphere, Enter Sandman on national TV, because that hasn't been there. It's been on ACC Network or like ESPN Plus. So you get to show them on the NBC Saturday night game, or the CBS afternoon game, because it's a massive game, and you get to show, wow, Blacksburg, Virginia, Enter Sandman. That place is awesome. The other aspect of Virginia Tech before we move to Penn State that's actually kind of cool, Brent Pry just got fired at Virginia Tech. Brent Pry was on James Franklin's staff at Penn State. He was his DC. So James Franklin probably got a good laydown of what the program's like, of what Blacksburg is like. Like, it's not like, basically Brent Pry did a lot of right by the school that just fired him, basically making Virginia Tech like attractive for the even though like he was just fired. So Brent Pry, good stuff by him. Question for you, shifting to Penn State, couple minutes here. You know how I feel about this. I don't hate the firing. I don't love the fire. At the time, I didn't when James was fired there, but I also understood that it had to be done. I think you can have it both ways. The guy did so much at Penn State, consistent, really good team, never got over the hump. Eventually, something just felt like it broke. So I understood it. The thing I said to you on the show when he got fired was, you better have a plan on what your next option is, because whether or not you think you can upgrade, you better upgrade. Like, it's really hard to upgrade from a coach that was consistent 9 to 11 game winner. And his only flaw was he couldn't beat the top teams in the country. So I guess you know where I'm asking you with this, but I also want to ask you, who wins a conference title first, Penn State or Virginia Tech?
I actually think Virginia Tech is primed more to win a conference title, especially now with James Franklin, than Penn State. But I almost think that's more so due to the lack of ACC challenge that they would receive versus in the Big Ten. In order to win the Big Ten championship, you're going to have to probably get through at least one of, if not more, of Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, USC, Washington, Michigan. There's a lot more top end talent to surpass. That's interesting. I think Virginia Tech would probably get there first. But then if you were to ask me if they play on a football field next year, who do I think wins? Obviously, it depends on how these two rosters are built. But Penn State, like today, would be, in the better situation.
Of course.
So, good question. Yeah.
But that Penn State team was built by James Franklin.
Yeah, that's a good point. If he can't have his own team.
Yeah. So what do we think about like Penn State and stuff? Because I know you have a lot of good notes written down on our doc.
Yeah, I kind of like. I know you and I see it a little bit differently from the Penn State perspective, which I actually like. I think it opens up the dialogue about probably if you were to go to the middle ground between us, you'd probably find where Penn State actually stands. But I think there's two key things to remember. Yeah, I think there's two key things to remember kind of about the situation. The first one is oftentimes when a coach is fired, in the moment, it's kind of like, yeah, you fired him, like, good call. And then later on, once that coach is hired and you start hearing, what a great hire, it's really easy to then all of a sudden get that like regret feeling of, oh, shoot, if he's a good hire, man, we shouldn't have fired him. But it's important to remember that just because a guy is a good hire elsewhere, it doesn't mean he was a bad fire. You can be a good fire at program A and be a good hire at program B. Those two things can exist together. They're not mutually exclusive. And I think that's what's happening here. I think Penn State, or I guess we know, this is not think, they said this, we know Penn State wanted to get, not just to be 10-2 every year, they wanted to win the big games and win a national championship. That was their goal. That's what they spend money to do. They certainly had funded a program to reach that. And after 12 years, they felt that James Franklin wasn't the guy to get them there. And if your goal as a program is to win a national championship and get to that upper echelon of college football, and a guy had 12 years to get there and couldn't, that's just the situation Penn State was in. Virginia Tech is not in we need to win a national championship now or it's a bust. That's why James Franklin's a good hire there. But at Penn State, they were looking to take that next step. And this leads me to my next point of the other key thing to remember. The goal for Penn State was not to hire another safe option like James Franklin. When Penn State fired James Franklin, they weren't firing him to then go back and replace him to be complacent at 9-3, 10-2 again. They don't want to go get Brian Kelly. They don't want to try and find, the next just big name on the market because it's fun. I think they did this to take the risk of going to find your guy, to go find the Marcus Freeman, to go find a Ryan Day, to go find a Dan Lanning. All of those coaches, granted Day was coming up from within Ohio State, but all those coaches were not the hottest name on the market when they were signed to these big programs. It was these big programs that had done their due diligence, done their research, found a guy that they think can be one of the next greats in college football, and they got him in. I remember when Lanning was hired, we're diehard Oregon fans, and that was even a guy that was not on our radar until very last second due to some beat writers kind of putting that name out there. Notre Dame fans have said Marcus Freeman was a guy that also wasn't big on the radar until it started to become signing day, and they realized, oh, shoot, okay, it sounds like we're going this route, because of insiders giving that information. And I say that because the right hire is probably a name that the vast majority of college football fans don't know. Or you might know the name because he's your defensive coordinator, but you never would have thought he was linked to a Penn State job. There's inherent risk in doing this, right? This is you have some great analogies with Mike Bobo in Georgia. You have great analogies with Matt Rule when he had left Nebraska, when Scott Frost took over Nebraska. This is risky. You can hire a bad hire and really tank a program. On the flip side, you can hire the guy that leads you to 6 national championships and the greatest stretch. And I think I'm bought in on. I think it's worth the risk. I think Penn State's floor as a program is high enough that you can survive a bad hire. If you miss once, they have enough money. I think they have enough branding. They have enough talent that wants to be there. They can survive it. And I think it was worth the risk. So I do see this as it was a smart fire, and it was the right fire based on where you want to be. Because James Franklin, I don't think was going to get you there. But I think it was a great hire for Virginia Tech. That's where I stand, and I know the risk is a big risk, and I'm probably downplaying it. So I'll let you kind of lean into that a little bit more here.
So my problem is I don't disagree with most of what you said. Maybe I'm more conservative in terms of like taking risks. I'm more risk averse. But I personally believe that the Dan Lannings, Marcus Freemans, Kirby Smarts of the world, they don't come around often. And if you are right that there's 4 out there that no one's heard of, and one team's at least going to hire him this cycle, one team's going to hire another guy next cycle, whatever. If you're right, does Penn State have the right people in the building to find him and identify him? I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying not last year there were a good amount of coaching openings. 2 years ago there were a lot of coaching openings. Why was Indiana the one to find Curt Cignetti? You're telling me like if other programs could have identified that level of winner, it wouldn't have been able to pay him more and offer him an even better destination than Indiana. The fact of the matter is like Dan Lanning was known at that point around college football circles. He was the defensive coordinator for the national title, national champion, built one of the best defenses alongside Kirby Smart. No one knew how he would build a program. And that was the risk Oregon was taking. But Oregon wasn't taking any risk on his like football intellect. I think that's like his X's and O's knowledge. Other aspect of Penn State's search that worries me, if you were a Penn State fan, is all right. It seems like whether or not Matt Rule was a real hire, you struck out on him. Whether real target, whether or not Mike Elko was a real target, you struck out on him. All right, so now you're going down the list of who you would have considered to be Grand Slam hires. So that's my entire point of like, you could be the guy that they could hire could be someone we're not even talking about right now. He could lead them to 6 national titles. Heck, they could go get Nick Saban. But I just think like they might be falling slightly behind, and we'll find out in the next 2 weeks because they have to hire their coach before like by season's end because they want to get started on recruiting and getting back into the mix for signing day, the portal, and everything. I don't think you're wrong about anything you said because I think it's always worth it to take a risk on someone you think could lead your program and elevate your program. I just wonder, did this cycle for Penn State end up as like a worst possible situation for them without them even knowing? Because when they fired Franklin, you said it correctly, they want to get a head start on this hiring cycle. Well, they expected Florida to open. They probably expected maybe Florida State to open. They didn't expect LSU to open. Arkansas, they probably expected to open. Like so, they went from the top job on the market to 3, 4, maybe 5, probably 4. I say all that to say, like, it was a great hire by Virginia Tech. He deserved to be fired at Penn State, but I'm not sure if Penn State's going to be able to upgrade this year. That's my entire
I think it could take time for Penn State. It could be a multi-year build up, but I think it's worth avoiding the apathy from a fan base and from, more importantly, your boosters and donors. Fair. The last thing you want to do is like stick around with a coach that your boosters are no longer bought in on, and there goes your funding. And I think the other part of it too is, now I'm thinking about this, is Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be my analogy. Sorry, this is a double whammy for Steelers and Penn State fans. not to dog on you too much here. I have some friends who are Steelers fans, and they hate being the 9-8 first round exit playoff team. And they all will tell you they would rather just suck, just unbelievably suck for 3 years if that means they can rebuild to actually be a true, real contender and real team. And they hate this like constant cycle of Mike Tomlin 9-8 being just good enough to be relevant and to be like on TV, but never good enough to actually feel like they're gonna watch good football consistently and make a run in the playoffs. And I kind of think Penn State was that same version, just college football. Obviously, the record was better, but in the NFL, you also aren't going like 12-0, right? You're like the best teams are like 14-3, 13-4.
Well, you're also
I think they're in the same spot
picks.
though. Yeah, I think they were just in a similar spot though, where they were just consistently good and they never got over that hump. And as a fan, I'm a Detroit sports fan. I've had some of my teams be in that position where you're like, I would rather just suck if it means that maybe I have a future than I would just be in this middle ground. And I think for Penn State too, when we go back after that Oregon loss, if you go back to the way Penn State fans were talking about their program, it is like truly it broke them. Like that was seriously the game where it was like we spent all this money on Jim Knowles, all this money to bring everybody back. This was our game that we were going to win this home night game, college game day whiteout, and it didn't happen. And I think that was the game where people were like, I would rather take the risk and suck if that means I don't have to do this every year. So I think it was a win for Penn State, but that's the biggest question mark. A guaranteed win for James Franklin and a guaranteed win for Virginia Tech is maybe how I would look at it, and a potential win for Penn State.
You're right. You actually made a really good point about the apathy. That is the one place no team, pro or amateur, wants to ever get into, with apathy from their fan base. So that's why they had to fire him. I will say, you use an NFL comparison, I'll use an NFL comparison, and we'll wrap up this topic. When Jim Harbaugh went to the NFL, the talk was he's going to have a leg up in the first 3 drafts just because he's recruited all those guys. He's sat in all those living rooms, whether or not he's gotten them to Michigan or not. He knows those kids better than a Mike Tomlin, who's been in the NFL for the last 5 years. I know he's been there longer, but like over those kids' time spans as professional or college collegiate athletes. James Franklin, we've seen the stat. There have been 17 decommits from Penn State since his firing. About 16 more than the next highest team who fired their coach. There is a chance, because he's staying in the Northeast, because he still maintains all those really good connections, that while Penn State's trying to rebuild, because next year they're going to have a completely new roster full of seniors this year, those guys are graduating, and all those 17 kids decommitted, while Penn State's trying to rebuild slightly, James is going to just keep loading up on the guys that were considering Penn State to go play for him. And it's funny because Virginia Tech and Penn State won't play, but Virginia Tech is going to take us like 2 or 3 steps forward, and Penn State might take 2 or 3 steps backwards. That's my entire thought on that. Let's get into the team that broke Penn State. Oregon is number 7. Oregon's a 9.5-point favorite this Saturday against number 15 USC in Autzen Stadium in Eugene. College game day is going to be there. This is Saturday, 3:30 Eastern on CBS. All right, this is the game, man. Left Oregon and Washington and the Pac-12 to go to the Big Ten. And then a year later, Oregon and Washington announced that they're going to join USC and UCLA. This is the game that when Mario Cristobal left Oregon and Lincoln Riley got hired by USC, everyone basically said, okay, the power dynamic on the West Coast is about to shift back towards USC. This is the game that Oregon continued to be dominant, continued to recruit LA kids, and then USC went out and hired Chad Bowden from Notre Dame to be Lincoln Riley's GM. And now in year 4, they finally have a good recruiting class, and the team is looking a lot better than even like any of us expected. We were pretty high on USC, but they're looking pretty scary if you're taking a look at their defense and offense in general. Oregon's a 9.5-point favorite for a reason, though. Is there where do you want to start on this game?
Yeah, well, let's start with USC's offense. I think that's the most surefire piece of the 4 puzzles of this game. they're incredibly well balanced. They have multiple running backs. Wayman Jordan might not play. Lincoln Riley said he doesn't expect him to play. We'll see if that's true or not. But even without him, they have King Miller. They have Eli Sanders. Jaden Mayava can run the football. They have a big back in Brian Jackson they bring in for short yardage and goal line touches. They have multiple talented running backs. They have a good offensive line that's good in pass protection. They're good in the run game. This is a team that can run between the tackles. They can run outside. They'll do option runs. They can kind of beat you in any facet on the ground. And then also in the air, they have arguably the best 1-2 punch at wide receiver in Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane. Mekhi Lemon will be maybe the first wide receiver off the board, a surefire first-round pick. And then Jacoby Lane is a tall, lanky, kind of go ball 50-50 guy that's more like 75-25 on jump balls. So you're going to see a huge test for the Oregon defense. It's an Oregon defense that is statistically one of the best in the country. They haven't been tested all that much this season. They did play Indiana, and they did hold up well in that game. I think Indiana ended up with 30 points, but about 14 of those were at the very end of the game when Oregon's offense was like going for 4th downs on their own 10-yard line kind of thing. So it's been a really good defense this season, but they have not played an offense nearly as balanced, and I don't think with nearly the amount of top-end talent that USC has. Jacoby Lane's going to be playing on Sundays. Jaden Mayava is going to be playing on Sundays. Mekhi Lemon's going to be playing on Sundays. King Miller is going to be playing on Sundays. It's a very talented offense. So I think that's probably where I start first. I'm curious if you're Oregon, you're Dan Lanning, you're Tosh Lupoy, you're in those rooms. What do you focus on if you're the Oregon defense? Like what part of the USC offense do you think makes this thing churn?
So when we talk about Oregon's game plan against Penn State before they broke, or when we talk about Oregon's game plan against Indiana, or I don't know, next week when they play Washington, is their game plan is always shut the run down, set the edges, use your big D tackles to not let them run through the tackles, and force the quarterback to try to beat you. The concern is with this team, the quarterback and the receivers can beat you. So what I fully expect is, honestly, maybe they'll put a second guy on Mekhi Lemon, but I fully expect USC's offense is not the same when they cannot run the ball. One of the reasons that they had struggled in past years, and I know Jaden Mayava was a shell of himself last year compared to this year. I know he's gotten so much better. I get that. I know King Miller is really good as a walk-on. But before this year, their best year was with Caleb Williams. And yes, Caleb was good and the Heisman that year, but Travis Dye and their run game in general was really good, and it allowed them to be balanced. If Lincoln Riley, as the offensive play caller, has a balanced offense, it's really hard to be able to stop them over a 60-minute game. So that anyone who says Oregon's going to destroy, I see a path for them to do that. Don't get me wrong. I think Oregon's offensive line is bigger, more physical. They can move the USC defensive line. I think Oregon's defensive line can get through the USC offensive line. With that said, I think this is going to be like one of the complaints that Oregon fans have about their defensive line is like, man, you have all these 5-stars. You have very little sacks or tackles for loss. But then you see like the hurries and the quarterback hits they have. USC is going to be playing quick game as much as they can. They're going to be running the ball. Jaden Mayava is not going to be holding that. They're going to use the screen game. They're going to try to get the ball out as quick as possible to not even make it a conversation about Oregon's defensive line, not even let them have an impact. So if Oregon can at least shut down or slow down USC's run game, make it 2nd and 8 instead of 2nd and 6, all of a sudden you're going to force Jaden Mayava into more, all right, you got to make this 3rd and 6 pass play instead of 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 play action or a quick out route, get the first down kind of thing. I think if you can slow down that run, you can definitely slow USC down. On the flip side, and the other curious part for you, I have for you is USC's defense can get got. They can get got through the air over their head, and they can get got on the ground. Obviously, respond to what I said, but where's Oregon's game plan offensively? Where should they start that game plan?
Yeah, I'll close out the defensive side here, and then I'll get into the question. Defensively, so for Oregon and defense, USC offense, Oregon's defense has forced the quickest time to throw of any Power 4 team in the country this season. And USC has held the ball the longest of any team in the country this season. It's going to be really interesting to see what gives. USC's O-line has been really good in pass pro, which has given Jaden Mayava a lot of time to sit back and wait. I don't like the word wait because it makes it sound like it's a bad thing. It's a good thing. Wait for Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane to get where he wants them, to get separation, and then that's where they're going to kill you, because if you let Mekhi Lemon catch the ball, he'll make you miss, he'll break a tackle. If you get Jacoby Lane one-on-one or you get him in a spot and you throw a jump ball, he's probably going to come down with it. If you're Oregon, I think that's in the passing game, you have to continue to get pressure. Teams have just game planned around how quickly Oregon gets there. To a team like Indiana, that works well for them. They're an RPO team, they're a quick pass team. So it really played into the hands of like, okay, this is what we like to do. It's a strength of ours, and it kind of mitigates the strength of them. This is a scenario where you have strength on strength, and something's going to have to give. USC's not, they'll throw a quick screen pass to the border, but they're not necessarily a quick drag or a quick slant type of team, which is also a weakness of Oregon. Their biggest weakness and really the only weakness on the defense is the linebacker room, and that's the biggest weakness. So USC is going to have to find a way to attack them quickly over the middle if they're going to want to get the ball out fast. But then I'll move on to your offense, the Oregon offensive game plan. If you go through USC's last 4 games, so it's the Iowa game, the Northwestern game, the Nebraska game, and the Notre Dame game. In all of those games, they have had a terrific pass defense. You go to CJ Carr, he was 16 of 26 for 130 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, took 2 sacks. You go to Nebraska, granted Dylan Raiola got hurt in this game, but before he got hurt, he was only 10 of 15 for 90 yards, and TJ Lateef comes in, he's only 5 of 7 for 7 yards. Northwestern, Preston Stone's been having a good year, but he was 20 of 30 for 150. So teams haven't been able to move the ball downfield much. The Iowa game, Iowa doesn't throw the ball much, and it was also raining, so I'm not going to look too deep into the passing stats there. But even then, Gronowski was 12 of 19, 130 yards, and threw a pick as well. Their secondary has been great. They actually are facing potential 2 big injuries. Both their safeties might not play, but last week, the 2 safeties that stepped up ended up being just as effective and making some big 4th down stops for them. So they're good in the back end, but that also has come at the expense of them committing to stopping the pass, because at the beginning of the year they were getting gashed in the air. And the expense of that is teams have been running buck crazy all over USC. They have one of the worst run defenses in the Power 4 for the country, and Power 4 teams. I've said that crazy. So weirdly. Buck wild. That's what Oregon's going to kill. Oregon is second in the country in yards per carry at 6.33, only behind Navy. USC really has struggled with interior D-line. Iowa's offensive line was moving bodies for USC last week. Iowa lost, yes, but it was pretty easy pickings for Iowa's running backs. I would argue Oregon has a better O-line and better running backs, and I have to assume that's where Oregon's going to attack. Just right up the middle, Oregon has 3 to 5 backs they'll use. Their quarterback can run. Also, they're most likely going to be down again their top 2 wide receivers, and I don't think Evan Stewart is back quite yet. So I expect a lot of run plays. Jeremiah Love ran for 230, averaging 9 yards a carry on this defense. I think it's going to be a whole lot of that on Saturday. And that's that. If I'm Will Stein, I'm not getting too cute. I'm sticking to the ground.
And the reason I think Iowa slowed down in that second half was because that's all they do. They're not very creative, or eventually you get predictable. And eventually when the threat of the pass is so low, you can commit to so many to the box, and Iowa eventually ended up stalling out. But Oregon has the ability to just dominate on the ground. But then here's a deep shot on play action by Dante Moore. If he hits it, I think Oregon can name the way they want to play in this game. It just really depends on, USC's defensive line, they can be got through the run, but against the pass, they can get to the quarterback. So if they hit Dante, if they get in his face, if they put pressure on him, then all of a sudden you are asking for a much tougher game if you're Oregon than you expected. You're asking for instead of like having a comfortable win, like USC is going to score no matter what. Maybe not every drive. Oregon's defense is really good, but USC is probably going to be 20s, 30s against Oregon. You need the Oregon offense to be clicking, and the run game is the main part of that. And also, the reason I asked you, like, how does Oregon offensively game plan for this is if you have that run game and you have the ability to still complete passes, unlike Iowa, do you just try to keep Mekhi Lemon Jacoby Lane, Jaden Mayava off the sideline as long as possible. Keep him out of rhythm, because we have seen USC. Actually, I'll try to find this stat, but we have seen USC completely different as a different team on the road versus at home. They average much less points. Obviously, I don't think this is as much of a road game for them because they're staying on the West Coast, so they probably feel good about that. But when they went to Nebraska, they won the game, but Jay Mayava had a terrible game. USC at home is averaging 45.3 points per game. On the road, they're averaging 27.5. At home, they've given up 19.2 per game. On the road, they've given up 25.5. Yards per play offensively is 2 points higher at home. Yards per play defensively is 1 point higher on the road. Third down percentage is 59% at home, 43% on the road. And by the way, the road opponents are Purdue, Illinois, Notre Dame, and Nebraska. Very good teams. But that's also a factor of this. Does USC's home road splits come into play here? Will they be able to manage the Autzen crowd? And then a completely non-analytical nugget I just thought of, and I looked up the quote. The Oregon defensive coordinator, Josh Lupoy. So Dan Lanning was hired 2021, same year as Lincoln Riley. And at a signing day event, they were both at Oregon. They both were asked about Lincoln Riley's hiring, and they said, the reporter basically asked, like, he got close to Oklahoma. Are you concerned? I don't remember what the exact question was, but are you concerned with him at SC? And Josh Lupoy took the mic from Dan Lanning because Dan Lanning couldn't comment on that. And he goes, only because you brought him up, he did get close, real close. I was the defensive coordinator at Alabama on the other side of the line. He had a guy named Kyler Murray, really good player. We were up 28-0 in the first quarter, but he did get close. You're right. So Josh Lupoy and Dan Lanning, realistically, it sounds like if that's how they feel about Lincoln Riley, they're not concerned. With that said, I think there's a very good reason to be concerned for this game. USC is a team that can get you, and if they get you, they can be suffocating because their offense proposes such a threat. Your team, like if USC goes up with the 10-0 lead, the offense for Oregon might start pressing, just because that's the nature of what USC can do to you with their threat on offense.
Yeah, it's a team. I'll make my last point here. It's a team you can't beat yourself against a team like USC. They're not world beaters, like you said. Their defense is beatable, but at the same time, their offense is very good to the point where if you get too cute on offense and you, like last week when they ran the screen pitch play and it went for a fumble, you can't do that. You can't bad errors, bad mistakes. You do have to play clean. I do expect Oregon to run the crap out of the football and run it straight up the middle. And I think there's probably going to be 300 yards on the ground. And I think the game plan will be keep your defense as fresh as possible and keep their offense off the side of the field. But I do expect some points in both of USC's big road games at Illinois, at Notre Dame. They lost by giving up 34 points. I think that's probably where Oregon will be. So can the defense keep it under that? That's the big question. We won't answer that, though, because they're going to be part of our pick.
You'll find out our picks at the end of the show. We're going to get into our polls. We have the F4D poll 4.0, but the College Football Playoff Committee most recent ranking just came out, so I'm just going to run through it, and then we can get to that 4D poll. They have Ohio State, Indiana, A&M 1 through 3 unchanged. Georgia moves up to 4, Texas Tech up to 5, Ole Miss, Oregon, Oklahoma moves up to 8, Notre Dame moves up to 9, Bama drops down to 10. So that's curious. We just talked about Oregon. If they take their second loss, how much is the committee going to punish them this weekend? And then USC is at 15 in their rankings. How much is the committee going to move them up if USC wins this game? BYU 11, Utah, Miami, Vanderbilt, USC through 15, Georgia Tech, Texas, Michigan, Virginia, Tennessee to 20, and then Illinois, Mizzou, Houston, Tulane, and ASU round out the top 25 of the College Football Playoff Poll. Any comments on that, or you want to get to that 4D 4.0?
Let's get to the truth serum poll here, the people's poll. I think this is going to be a more accurate ranking.
Yes. So as our committee always does, last night our committee spent hours in a New Hampshire bedroom coming up with the F4D Poll 4.0. Jason, last week it was Texas basement. This time it was New Hampshire bedroom. We told them we were going to kick them out of Texas because they were favoring Texas. Jace and I got the rankings early this morning. We made a couple adjustments. But Jace, without further ado, would you like to release the F4D Poll 4.0?
Let's hit it. So at number 25, we have Tulane. 24, Arizona State. 23, the Washington Huskies. 22, Missouri. 21, SMU. Number 20, Houston. And then 19 to 15 is Texas, Virginia, Michigan, USC, and Georgia Tech at 15. Kicking into the top 10 here, we have Utah, BYU, Vanderbilt at 12, Miami at 11, Alabama at 10. So Miami is our highest ranked ACC team at the moment, but they're also not in a particularly favorable spot to get to the ACC title game. And then rounding out the top 10, we have Alabama, Oklahoma at 9, Notre Dame, Ole Miss, Oregon at 6, Texas Tech at 5, Georgia at 4, Texas A&M at 3, Indiana at 2, Ohio State at 1. Not too much different between our two polls. We have a couple preferences where we flip teams, and then the back end, we had some changes of teams we just thought had better resumes than the teams they were throwing in there. But I think at that point, it's pretty nitpicky. I don't think they care about those teams either.
No, I think we're getting down to the same answer that we had last week, so we don't even need to spend too much time on this week. The top 10 teams in college football are the top 10 teams in college football. You can argue about one or two, but the best teams in college football in a year where there's not a perfect team or a fully stacked team, they have the top 8 or so correct. And then after that, we'll see. And I think, like you said, the Truth Teller poll, our committee, that 4D poll, I think this feels right. This gives BYU a shot at the playoff. If they win out, gives Utah a shot despite losing to BYU. If they win out, Georgia Tech and Miami, they're going to battle it out at some point, presumably in the ACC championship game. USC could see a massive rise if they beat Oregon this week. Oregon, I don't think it would be a playoff eliminator if they lose to USC, but for USC it would be if they lost to Oregon. And then you gotta give, like, you gotta kill, not kill, that's the wrong word. You gotta drop Texas down, way down. They just haven't shown up against the best teams in the country. Any other notes on our F4D poll, or you want to get a shot in the bark?
No, I like our F4D poll. Let's get into the shot in the bark.
All right, shot in the bark. Every week, Jason and I pick one game. The underdog of the game has to be an 8.5 points or greater underdog. If they cover, we get 1 point. If they win outright, we get 2 additional points. We're coming down to the nitty gritty, the final couple weeks of this wonderful game that we've started. I had a lead for a while. I choked. Jace is on top. He has 13 points. So, Jace, why don't you tell us who your shot in the bark is?
I was down to a few of them. Not a lot of good opportunities this week, thanks to the and I'm not picking Mercer plus 41.5. I went with the USC Trojans plus 9.5 in Eugene, Oregon.
Brutal.
I think Oregon's going to win this football game, but that 2 scores is a lot of points for the number 15 team in the country. A good offense as well. So I think this will be a close game. I think the Trojans can give me a cover and a slight emotional hedge in there as well. I just really need 1 more point to feel really confident about the season.
Yeah, if you get 1 more point, you're sitting at 14. If I don't cover this week 11, I would need you next week to miss, and I would need an outright win for me to even tie. So you can clinch a win essentially with 1 point. My shot in the bark this week, Nebraska plus 9.5 at Penn State. This is a battle of backup quarterbacks. I just feel like 9.5 is too big of a number. And Nebraska, like, the conversation when you have a backup quarterback in is, can your team operate like 80% of what your starter had? And Nebraska showed that they can. Penn State probably is at 60 to 75, depending on that Indiana performance and before that. Like Mizzou, like one game, Matt Zollers is at 80%, Roe Prabula. One game, he's probably at 50%. So I'm betting on Nebraska to be able to cover the 9.5 and get me at least 1 point or keep me alive and shot in the bark.
I like the Nebraska one. That was one of the other ones I had written down for that. I had USC and then Kentucky was they're all 9.5. They were the other one. I think Nebraska's a great pick.
2 more conversations 2 more topics before we get into our picks. Potentially one more, depending on how long we take on the first one. First, we got to talk about Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin has been courted by Florida. He's been courted by LSU. He is being asked by Ole Miss, like, bro, we're in a playoff race. Like, can you cool it? Like, can you at least like tell us what you're going to do after this? This week, there's been reports. People have been flight tracking. There have been people camping out at the Gainesville airport and the Baton Rouge airport. They've seen his ex-wife and kids hop out of the airport, presumably to go look at neighborhoods and schools and homes. So it's clear Lane has interest in finding out if he has interest. That's all we really know. He has interest in finding out if he would like to go to be the LSU head coach or if he would like to go and be the Florida head coach. We don't really know what else because he's done such a troll job on Twitter that it's all ridiculous. He was on McAfee today. There were reports earlier today that Ole Miss had given him an ultimatum that he has to decide by the start of Egg Bowl prep whether or not he's going to be at Ole Miss next year. And if he's not, they were going to keep him away from the team for the college football playoff. So that's a whole other conversation. And then he went on McAfee today and said there's absolutely no ultimatum. But it sounds like there has to be some sort of time that Ole Miss said, I need an answer by. And it feels like Lane Kiffin wasn't prepared for that. It feels like Lane Kiffin was like, I've earned the ability to like shop around and explore my options. And I don't know why Ole Miss is mad about it. Like this has turned into such a saga at this point. I don't even know where to start.
He's like trolling so much and like stirring the pot so much that I almost feel that he's not going to be at Ole Miss long term because of this. I almost like if I was an Ole Miss, anyone associated with the program, I would feel kind of disrespected by like him posting kind of like memey stuff on Twitter about follow your heart, don't listen to others. And like the way he's kind of just like gloating about this and kind of making light of it. Because if you're Ole Miss, this is serious. You're one of the top teams in the country with a chance to go win a national championship and have one of the best seasons in program history. And you're kind of just treating it like a joke. I almost feel like he's kind of burning that bridge, whether he means to or not. So I almost foresee this being, okay, he's not going to be at Ole Miss. I don't know if it's Florida. I don't know if it's LSU. I have no clue there. I think the lack of the seriousness now he's not a serious person, so I don't want to read into it too much. But the lack of seriousness from him almost makes me think that way. I mean, he's been like this his whole career. This is who Lane Kiffin is. This is part of the risk you take when you hire Lane Kiffin. So who am I to say what he's going to do and not do? I think he's a really good football coach, and I would love to see him at LSU or at Florida, somewhere with a little bit more money, a little bit more branding, a little bit more recruiting power, somewhere that he can like try and go win a national championship at. I think that would be fantastic. And I can tell you, if you're Florida or LSU, this is your home run hire, especially Florida. He's from there. He's going to be recruiting that area like a hot, like just, I mean, with Florida State being down right now, and yes, they're very good, but I think that if the Gators can become back and you have Lane Kiffin recruiting the state of Florida in the SEC with them being as good as they are right now, I think that would really, or not as good as they are right now, as good as they would be with Lane, like the way Ole Miss is. I think you could create a superpower there. So I think Lane Kiffin, I think he knows this. Like, he's not dumb. He knows that he can upgrade with those two schools. I also think he could just be trying to buy himself some time, get Florida desperate, get LSU desperate, see who's going to cough up a little bit more money, see who can get that buyout nice and high. Because I think the truth is these other programs are going to become more desperate than Lane Kiffin is going to be. Worst case scenario, if they don't come across with an offer he likes, he's in a spot that wants him long term, where he's going to get paid, where he's going to win still. But I do think he's probably eyeing one of these two upgrade jobs.
It's funny you say, like, because he's been such a troll, you feel like he's leaving Ole Miss. It almost also feels like he's absolutely planning on staying and he's just trolling Florida and LSU. So I don't know what he's thinking. It like every day my thought process has changed. When I first started, I told you my inkling was he was going to stay. And then the last week or so, I was like, oh, he's definitely going to Florida. And then this week, I'm like, sounds like he might be going to LSU and Florida might be off the table. So I don't really know what he's thinking. What I wanted to ask you about before we move on. I want to know what side of the boat what side you're on, because there's absolutely legit arguments for both. Kiffin, head coach at Ole Miss, brings them back from not irrelevance, but like they were never a contender in the SEC. They had a couple good years under Hugh Freeze, but 9-4. It wasn't ever like Lane Kiffin has 4 10-win seasons in 6 years. This is the closest they've been to a national title in program history, or like at least since before like 50 years ago. So you would think if you were Lane Kiffin, you'd be looking at the scenario of like, bro, I have options. I'm going to explore them, but I've earned the right to go coach my team towards a potential national title because I've built this program. So that's one side of the street. But you're also on the other side with Ole Miss, and you're like, bro, if you aren't committed to us after this season, you're going to go to Florida. I don't care if you're a national title contender. We're not letting you recruit for Florida and against Ole Miss while you're the head coach of Ole Miss. I don't know how many of our players you're going to be able to take over to Florida or LSU. Does that make sense? Like, Ole Miss doesn't want Lane Kiffin to stick around if he's committed to another job after the season's over, because he doesn't want to. Ole Miss doesn't want Lane to be recruiting for another school while being the Ole Miss head coach. Oh, you know, does that make sense? So I wonder which side of the street you're on.
Man, I think I like what Ole Miss has done. If the ultimatum stuff is true and the way that they've handled this is true, I like that they're sticking up for themselves, putting their foot down and saying, like, you're either in or you're out, and I'm not really down to let you kind of play around with this future, because football in the SEC is everything. And if you let a coach kind of troll on social media and clown you in that way and then leave to go take a job after, let's say he does coach at Ole Miss and they put up a really sloppy first round performance and lose in the playoff, and then he's gone the next day, I would be really angry if I were Ole Miss. You wasted such a great opportunity. Yeah. So I like that they're putting their foot down on it. I like, from the standpoint of, I would love clarity. I would love for him to like take it a little more seriously and let us know what he's thinking. But I also know that's not him, and that's part of the Lane Kiffin experience is the craziness that he's going to bring along. I think he's doing what's best for him, and I think Ole Miss is doing what's best for them. And I think you have to respect both of them for doing that. It's unfortunate for them, and it really unfortunate for Ole Miss players and fans that doesn't line up. Also, it's unfortunate because Ole Miss has the Egg Bowl, right? You play Ole Miss, Mississippi State. It hasn't really been a meaningful game in quite a while because they've either both been stinky or Mississippi State's been extra stinky and Ole Miss has been pretty good. Mississippi State, and I'm not claiming they're world beaters or they're fantastic, but this is the best Mississippi State team we've seen in kind of probably since Kellen Mond. And it's still like a 500 team, but they could beat you if you don't take it seriously and you don't have a good game plan and you're trying to figure out the dollar amount with LSU and you're not paying attention. You could lose this game, and losing this game with the season you've had would just be so gut wrenching and heartbreaking. I don't think it would. Now, the interesting part is it should knock them out of the playoff the way that like Oregon losing to USC would get knocked out of the playoff. But because they have the SEC shield, I think they'll be okay if they lose this game, but I wouldn't test the waters. And at the very least, you sacrifice hosting a home game in the college football playoff to now you're traveling somewhere. Best case scenario.
I almost wonder, though, like, I guess my question in general was more so, if you were Ole Miss and this is the best opportunity your team's had at a national title, I get the fact that if Lane's leaving or thinking about leaving, you got to go hire a coach. And you can't technically hire a coach without knowing that your coaching job is going to open. And with all the job openings right now, there's like John Summerall, he's the favorite at Auburn, but I would assume if Ole Miss opened, he would be the favorite at Ole Miss. Like some of these guys are going to get hired if you don't know by the end of the season that Lane's staying or going. So you got to jump on it if he's going. I get that. But there is an aspect of, this is the best team you've had in decades. Screw next year and the years to come. Let him coach it out and try to win a national title, because who knows how close you'll get here, no matter how much time you have to hire the next coach. Like, that's the aspect of it.
Yeah. If he, whether he's being truthful or not, it's a different story. But if he's telling you, I'm going to stay at Ole Miss, I would, come playoff time, I wouldn't question it. I would say, okay, sounds good. Let's go win this national championship. Now, I might stay a little close to him, make sure he's not interviewing while in the playoff and that kind of thing. But if he's telling you to your face, like, yes, I'm committed, I would let him coach to the reason you said. But as soon as you get a whiff of him the week before, you have to go host a playoff game, and you go to his office to go talk to him, and where's Lane? You find out he's in Baton Rouge for the next 2 days. I would be livid, and at that point, I would say I would go find a coach right then and there. So I guess to your point, yes, if he hasn't taken a job and he says he's to Ole Miss, I would let him coach it out because it is your best chance. But as soon as I get that feeling that he's not, I think you have to stick up for yourself. And I saw a good article from like the Ole Miss Sports Illustrated page, and it was talking about how there's been a lot of respect within the SEC and within Ole Miss around like players' parents and things like that around how this university has handled this in terms of like putting their foot down, talking about there's a lot of respect that parents and athletes and other coaches in the program and around the SEC have given to Ole Miss, saying like, I respect that you stood up for yourself. A lot of schools give in, and it shows a lot about like your integrity and how much you care about your program, which is there's irony in that for other reasons we don't need to talk about. But I do. It's a tough situation about where they stand.
I want to make it clear. I don't know what side of that street I'm on. I don't know if I would be on the Ole Miss suck up your pride, go try to win a national title, maybe take a down year next year or two, but at least you got here and that was the goal in the first place. Or if I'm on the side of, yeah, I guess if it was my program, I'd tell the coach, like, get out. Like, we got to go hire a guy and we got to be ready for the years to come. So there's different aspects of it. I don't know. Right now, call your shot. Where's Lane Kiffin next season?
Florida Gators.
I think I'd have to agree. I also think realistically, an aspect of what people aren't really talking about or hasn't been really reported is Lane, sure, he has to give a Ole Miss an answer by next week before Egg Bowl prep. But LSU and Florida are going to want an answer by the end of the season too. So if Lane keeps pushing this out into like mid-December, which I don't think he would do because of signing day in the portal, those schools might move on. So I expect a resolution on this in the next 7 days, if not sooner. And maybe by the time the show comes out, there's already resolution on it. One thing we are also seeking resolution for is our final standings in the week in our year-long pick'em. As Jace mentioned off the top, I'm 1 game ahead of him in our standings for the season. At 40, I'm 45, 39, and 1. He's 44, 40, and 1. I've had a monumental choke job, I had, I think, probably like a 6 or 7 game lead. Now I'm sitting at 1. Jace, got 2 more weeks to pick them left. Let's do this thing. Jace, you pick first. You had you won picks last week. Kansas State going to number 12, Utah. Utah is wait for it, 17.5 point favorite. This is Saturday, 4 Eastern on ESPN2. It's not even ESPN1. It's ESPN2. What you got?
I'm going to roll with the 17.5. Give me the Utes. When they win football games, they blow teams out. Dylan Edwards isn't, he's going to enter the portal, so he's not playing for Kansas State anymore. Give me the Utes. I think they're going to run away with this one.
I'm going to be right there with you. I'm sorry. Utah's my Big 12 champ. 17.5 points. I really want to take Kansas State, but I'm not losing pick'em on my team. On my Big 12 championship team.
That would be devastating.
It would be the worst emotional hedge of all time. So Utah, I'm taking them to win and cover the 17.5. It's a massive spread, but they destroy teams. Game number 2, unranked Pittsburgh goes to number 16, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's a 2.5 point favorite, Saturday, 7 Eastern on ESPN. Now, this is before we make our picks, Jace. This is, remember when last week when Pat Narduzzi was going into the Notre Dame week, he said, I don't care if we lose by 100. This isn't an ACC game. So this is an ACC game. If they win out, they're in the ACC title game. What say you? Who wins this game? Who covers?
I'm going to go Georgia Tech to win this game and to cover the 2.5. Think telling your team that they can take a week off because the game doesn't matter is just a death sentence to your motivation and to your preparation,
for the rest of the year,
your mentality. Yeah, I think you kill the preparation, the mentality, the hunger. I think college football, as we've seen and good coaches talk about it, it's getting better as the season goes on. And by letting off the gas pedal late in the season, in early November, against a Notre Dame team that a lot of these kids probably play in high school. A lot of these kids grew up in the Midwest. They probably root for or hate Notre Dame. They probably want to go out there and win. You have a rank next to your name. You let them lose, or you set them up for failure. You lose the rank. I think you also gave Georgia Tech a blueprint on how to beat you because you stunk in that game and got your butts kicked. I'm going to roll with Haynes King and Georgia Tech to show Pat Narduzzi what not.
Georgia Tech was my runner-up in the ACC. We don't need to talk about who I picked to win the ACC. So I'm going to stick with Georgia Tech to win and cover. I love the 2.5 mark. Georgia Tech could win.
I think
by
you had Pitt, right? You had
30
Pitt, Georgia Tech in the final. So I think you got screwed by this game, man. Or else what happened.
Yeah, totally. No, Georgia Tech, I'm going to pick them to win and cover. I love the 2.5 line because you could sell me on them winning by 3. You could sell me on them winning by 25. I just think I know that they're going to win. Number 20, Tennessee is a 3.5-point favorite in the Swamp at Florida, Saturday, 7:30 Eastern on ABC. Jace, is Lane Kiffin going to be on the field this Saturday for Florida?
That would be crazy if he was on the field for that game. I wouldn't put it past me, though. I don't know if Lane's going to be on the field or not. Yeah, I don't know if Lane will be there or not, but my money, hypothetical money, is going to be on Florida to cover that 3.5. Unfortunately for Tennessee, they're playing a Florida team that is now officially eliminated from bowl contention. They have 7 losses, which means you're going to get an ugly but hard-fought version of Florida. This is a team that maybe a little amped up, thinking that Lane Kiffin might be in the building. They'll be playing a little bit of fire. And as much as I want Tennessee to be good for my boy Will, they have in games where they play a team with a pulse, they just haven't looked great. I like the 3.5. That hook is really nice, and it is in Gainesville as well, so I think that helps too.
Your boy Will's about to be my boy Will. I'm taking Tennessee. Give me the Volunteers to cover the 3.5 and win the game. Florida's had I've seen Florida fans in the last week complain about how many night games they've had for a 3-7 team, and they're like, "Why can't we have a noon game?" And it's like, normally teams don't complain about being in prime time, but I guess they're just tired of waiting all day for their team to eventually lose. Give me Tennessee. I don't like the hook on the 3, but I'll take the 3.5. I'll swallow that and hope that Tennessee wins and covers. Okay, we got 2 Pac-12 classics to close out the pick'em. It's pretty fun. Cal's a 3-point favorite at Sanford, Saturday, 7:30 Eastern on the ACC Network. This game probably didn't belong in our pick'em. It's not our fault the SEC's playing my high school team this week, but it's not my fault that those games aren't there. But at the same time, when I saw this game, a tear came to my eyes because this is the OG Pac-12. All right, except it's on the ACC Network, which is the weirdest thing ever for Cal and Sanford still to me.
Mm-hmm.
Who you got in this game? Who wins? Who covers?
This was an impossible game to predict. Because we keep putting Cal in Shot in the Bar, Parlay, Pick'em. They are all over the place, dude. One week they look like world beaters, and the next week they're putting up 0 points at home to San Diego State. They're so hard to get a read on. Stanford's no good, but I think they're good for this one. Give me Stanford +3 at home, Battle of the Nerds, Battle of the Bay Area. I'm going to take Stanford.
All right, Battle of the Nerds. I'm gonna look at this point. If I'm gonna be wrong on Cal every time I pick them, I'm gonna go down with the ship. Give me Cal to win and cover. This one's definitely gonna be a push, but I'm gonna take Cal to win and cover this game. Look, I know this is on ACC Network, but this is 7:30 Eastern. This is shaping up to be Pac-12 during dark, at least not after dark, but it might turn a little nuts. The final game. We already know your pick, but I would love to hear why. Number 15 USC heading to Eugene, Oregon. College game day will be there. Everyone will have their eyes on this game. This is the biggest game of the week to play number 7 Oregon. Oregon's a 9.5-point favorite. Saturday, 3:30 Eastern on CBS. Jace, we know your pick. Want to expand?
Yeah, I'll keep USC I'm going to take them again, +9.5. Oregon's 3rd college game day this year, by the way, for a team with a weak schedule. It's pretty wild. I don't have much more to say, I guess. I think it's going to be a close game. I think the Ducks prevail, but I like the 9.5 for USC. It's a good offense. I have faith. There's an emotional hedge. large factor going into this as well. If I'm going to lose, I'm happy for it to be on the Ducks. It would suck to pick Oregon and lose on that one. I those gut feelings. I just see a world where Mekhi Lemon has just a crazy game and keeps them in it. So I'm gonna just USC for the emotional hedge.
I've been trying to make a game script of this game for the last week, and especially after USC beat Iowa, and it felt like in every one of those scenarios, Oregon probably won the game, but everyone who expects Oregon to blow them out is ridiculous. And 9.5 is too much for me. Oregon played Caleb Williams in USC 2 years ago, and they beat them pretty handily. The final score didn't reflect it as much because USC got a couple late scores in the game in the fourth quarter. But my entire thought process here is Oregon's going to control the run game. Oregon's going to make plays through the air, and they're going to win the game. Knock on wood. That's my pick. I want that to stand. But USC's not going to be stopped every time. You play Minnesota, they put up 13 points on you. It was vanity points at that point. You play Wisconsin, they scored 7 in a rainstorm because the quarterback threw a jump ball and it somehow ended up in a receiver's hands at the 2-yard line. You play, you played a bunch of teams that you could confidently stop 80% of the time. And Oregon has a 60% drive stop rate, and it's one of the best in the country. But USC is going to score, and Lincoln Riley, he is going to try to deliver a message to Oregon. They're going to keep this close. It might be a PI fest, honestly, with those receivers in Oregon's corners. And if that's the case, give me USC plus 9.5. They're going to lose the game to Oregon, but they're going to cover the 9.5. Emotional hedge for me too. Okay, Jace, we've made 5 picks. We're different on 2.
All right.
I'm keeping. I want you to know I'm keeping this fully like I'm not taking any strategies with my picks. I'm not trying to take
integrity.
This is full integrity for me. I'm not trying to take the same picks as you just so I can keep the 1 game lead. No, if you win, you win. But those are our picks. Jace, let's get into the flag for discussion 4-legger. Give out our first leg.
All right, first leg. We're going to take BYU minus 2.5 on the road to play Cincinnati. BYU's fighting for a playoff spot. Cincinnati just kind of had their hearts ripped out of them last week with a loss. They're out of the playoff. They're out of the Big 12 championship race. BYU is in both of those things. Give us the Cougars to continue this. And we like the hook with 2.5 not being.
Second leg, my shot in the bark, Nebraska plus 9.5 at Penn State. There's a lot of 9.5 lines this week, and we just thought that was too many points. Nebraska's been able to operate with their backup quarterback. Penn State has as well. Probably going to be a 3-7 difference game. We like the Nebraska plus 9.5.
It also could be a mini Matt Rule audition for the Penn State job, so he's going to want to go put out his best foot. All right, third leg, Kentucky plus 9.5 at Vanderbilt. We alluded to this. Vandy had an interesting bye week last week. There was a lot of Diego Pavia calling himself the Heisman, him going on podcast, him hanging out with, I don't remember which sorority it was, but him posting pictures with a bunch of sorority girls, talking about how he loved these lovely gals. That's a lot of parading around to be doing, and they play Tennessee next week. It's an easy overlook spot for them. Kentucky 5-5, playing for a bowl eligibility. We like them plus 9.5.
And then our final pick for our flag for discussion 4-legger, Maryland plus 14.5 versus Michigan. Look, Michigan has what it takes to destroy Maryland. They haven't destroyed many teams this year. The highest margin of victory, other than the cupcakes they played, was Washington by 17. We're taking the odds that it's going to be a 10 to 14 point win by Michigan. We'd still cover. Look, that's 4 great picks for our parlay. We'll see how it screws up this week, but make sure you take them. Don't fade us. If you want to bet, obviously, make sure you do it safely. All right, Jace, we had a jam-packed show. I know it says hour 20. I'm impressed with us that we kept it to an hour 20 because there was the second topic that I mentioned, we didn't even get to. And there's so much more to even talk about.
And with Oregon USC, we could have gone for hours. We could have went forever on that conversation.
And to the listeners at home, inside baseball here, we will go for hours. It's just going to be saving you guys from it. It will be in our text messages as voice memos. But make sure you're keeping in tune with us on Twitter at F4 Discussion, TikTok at Flag, the number 4 Discussion, YouTube at Flag for Discussion, spell it out, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm sure we're going to be tweeting out a bunch of our conversations from the next couple of days with one another and other reactions we have to the college football week this week. One housekeeping note, I'm probably going to be out for our week 13 recap show. Jace is going to take the mantle with his solo show. We'll be back next week. We're going to be on probably, I actually haven't talked about it with you, Jace, but we'll probably release an earlier show next week because Thursday's Thanksgiving. We'll probably see us on Wednesday next week for an earlier preview show of Rivalry Week, and then we'll get into it from there. That's all I got. That's the housekeeping stuff I got. Congrats, James Franklin. Congrats, Lane Kiffin, wherever you decide. Congrats, all the winners and losers from this game. And all right, I've talked too much. From myself, Farbod Merkazi, my lovely partner, Jace Hatfield, this has been Flagged for Discussion.